Hello there, Scotty and I are back, and we never said you were gone. We just had to retool a little bit. Scott, you were actually putting your collection in some order.
Trying to get all these wonderful things sorted.
Yeah, so I guess that, because obviously, he was at this particular point, we decided to do Genesis, and that makes a lot of sense because we recently bought you the vinyl discography of Phil Collins. And we're going to start out with an album that you said as an album is your favorite by Genesis. That's 1981's Abacab.
Abacab, yes.
There was some cover variations to this, like the Police's Synchronicity, wasn't there?
Yes.
I don't know how many different ones, but there were different color combinations that they released. I don't know if they were imports, but this is probably the most famous one on vinyl anyway. And, of course, there's little treasures to be found within.
That's favorite Genesis album. Actually, it's pretty much the first song I think I ever remember hearing from them was Abacab.
Great song. Another one of my favorites is No Reply at All. That's got the Earth, Wind and Fire Phoenix horns on it. This is out kind of as a complimentary album to Face Value, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the year that came out. So Phil Collins started his solo career right around the time this album was released. And there are custom labels. And also there's an inner sheet, which I'm sure you've seen. There's a custom label. Kind of like the Hall & Oates ones I did. Get a closer look up at it. It's yellow, pink, blue, and kind of a growl gray. Now, wasn't there a cover that was actually that color too?
I think so, yeah.
I think there was probably, the way these things were made, there was probably a custom label that was the same color as this cover too. So, and then there were three. If I recall, this is Phil Collins' third studio album with them from 1978. Nice time-lapse photography effects on there. Is there a custom on this? And this lyric sheet inside?
This was on Atlantic.
Just plain old Atlantic.
Follow You, Follow Me is on here, which I became familiar with from their Three Sides Live album.
And here we have Duke. This was the beginning of the Genesis 80s period. This came out in 1980.
And once again, here we have Turn It On Again.
Yep. And of course, Misunderstanding was a big hit off this.
And this one does have...
That has a custom label with the little Duke man. That little character running all around. The other side too. Now we're going to get into the Peter Gabriel era. You told me there was a story about how you got some of these earlier Genesis ones.
Yeah, most of the Genesis ones I bought from Bob Mace before he passed away.
Now, you were telling me a number of times that the Peter Gabriel era, I mean, you like Peter Gabriel as a solo artist, but in Genesis, you felt Phil Collins was a better fit, for you.
For me personally, yeah. I prefer.
But this is their second album, I believe, with Peter Gabriel on board. They always had nice cover art at any period. And there's a unique label on this that I've never really seen before. This one. The famous Charisma label with the Mad Hatter on it. I'm guessing these are probably British imports.
I don't know where he got these from. It doesn't say. I wish he was still around. I'd love to talk to him about some of these things.
And here is the follow-up to Abacab. Self-titled Genesis album, 83, I think. This has Mama, That's All, and, of course, Illegal Alien. So this is a big album for them. It's a regular Atlantic label. There's actually two of them in here. I don't know if the labels are different, but...
I'm pretty sure that's...
And Scott actually gave me one of these albums already. This album, we just discovered, had an interesting history. This is the collector's edition in the beginning, but it's actually Genesis's first album from 1969 called From Genesis to Revelation repackaged, and they give you a little citation on the top about that album. And this is on the London label, Blue London label. You know, you'll find a lot of Rolling Stone and Moody Blues records on that. Well, not Moody Blues. I think a couple Moody Blues, but they were mostly on Threshold, their own custom label after a while. Invisible Touch.
A Lavertier's sticker.
Yeah, this is Lavertier's album. Looks like it was $9.29 originally, 1986. I actually have a copy of this that you gave to me.
Yeah, I bought this, I believe, when they were closing out of records.
So, you know, with this album, obviously, you have the title song. You have, you know, Land of Confusion, one of my favorites by Genesis, and
Yeah, the whole first side was actually hits.
Throwing It All Away. Yeah, In Too Deep. Yeah, the first side was just like a big hit parade. This was a massive album, and it had a custom label, of course. You know, I seem to remember it being about 6, 7 years old. If it wasn't Susu Studio, you know, this was... It would seem like Phil Collins and Genesis were just everywhere in 86, 87, 85, just everywhere in some capacity. Genesis, Keep It Dark. This is one of the studio cuts from another album I think we'll be showing you. Is that what you said? 12-inch single. I don't know if it's an import or not.
It is an import.
It's on the Charisma label. And there's that Mad Hatter guy again.
Pretty sure this was from England. But you can usually, like I said in one of our previous videos, you can usually tell imports.
Right, they usually have different packaging and often different label writing. Okay, here's another one from the Peter Gabriel era, the last of the Peter Gabriel era albums. I personally got these in a big CD box set with videos and concert performance, just discount when they came out. The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And you know, this is kind of a treasure, especially if you like the Peter Gabriel era. I think it's on that same...
This one I think was on Atco.
No, this is a different label, that's right. There's some label stuff you can see, and it's Atco. Yeah, it's just the Atco label. You've all seen that before. Genesis Live. I would say this is probably, you know, from their really early period.
Just noticing.
Yep, Peter Gabriel has no mouth.
No mouth.
And speaking of which...
Was he being censored?
I don't know, but here's Peter Gabriel right here with some kind of strange hat and mask on. He loved the dressing costumes in that period. That was his M.O. at that point. You know, I would have loved to have seen a movie of this concert. Peter Gabriel, you know, whatever you say about him in Genesis, you know, whatever, he was a fantastic performer. Always was and always will be. Label again. Mad Hatter label. Nursery Crime. 1971, I believe. They always had these kind of Victorian... 72, I should say, rather. 72 that came out.
And once again, it's the...
Mad Hatter there. Seconds Out, another live album. This is a double one, right?
This was a double one.
And this was from the Phil Collins era. I don't know what year it came out, but we can probably find that out in a second. It's probably the first live album of the Phil Collins era. You know, his 70s era with the group. I don't know if there's a year, but I believe that's Chester Thompson. I don't know if any of you out there in the audience know him from the Georgia Duke Band at that point. This album is from 1977.
And if I remember right, this was just a standard.
Oh, it has a custom.
It's a custom label.
It has Genesis Live. If you can hold that up. There you go. Selling England by the Pound. Now, a lot of people have actually claimed this as being their favorite Peter Gabriel era Genesis album. And for me, I find it hard to disagree. I'm sure there's a track list. Is there a gatefold on this, or is it just...
No, this is just a standard bracket.
Is it the standard Buddha label? Has a lyric sleeve.
Sheet.
And yep, standard Mad Hatter label from Buddha. Now, I was talking about that single we saw earlier. It was from this album, 3 Sides Live. You actually have 3 copies of this, don't you? Well, I have 3 copies. You gave one to me.
Yes.
So, this is, I believe, a special promo version of it.
This one was just the regular one.
That's the regular one? Okay. And this had some new studio tracks, too.
Right.
And it has a custom label, as you can see. Basically like the cover. Now, this one's the promo version, because it says promo on top, and it has all this writing, and has a suggested cuts thing.
Mm-hmm. I got this in Pennsylvania when I lived in Scranton. They used to have this great big giant flea market up on a hill, and I bought that there. That was like it was in the 80s, early 80s. Used to love going to the flea market because you would never know what you're going to find for records there. Although the record does look the same, there's no difference between the promo.
Same custom. Yep, same custom label. Yep. And I believe this was recorded as a performance. I believe you can get it now, actually. I'm not sure, but I've heard that there's actually a performance of this on DVD you can get.
This is out on DVD and Blu-ray.
Right. Little plug-in there. Tonight, a single from Invisible Touch.
This is the remix long version.
It's a black Atlantic label. I don't know if it's a custom or not, but it's a little different than other Atlantic labels that you see. And here we have Wind and Wuthering. I just got a vinyl copy of this myself. Released in England in 1976 and over here in 77.
And I believe this is on the standard.
Yep, standard Atlantic label. So anyway, that's what we're dealing with here for Genesis. There's actually a couple albums that probably could round this out, like the first Phil Collins one. We just missed out on that. Trick of the Tail. But we'll run into that, I'm sure, again. And there's a couple more Gabriel ones that, could go well into the collection. And there's probably loads of more singles. But this is a pretty good, solid collection of Genesis stuff. And on a couple occasions, we have a couple copies, like there. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we've done Phil Collins, and now we've done Genesis. So, until next time, when we bring you Mike Rutherford, maybe? Or Mike and the Mechanics, you never know. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff surrounding Genesis here. So, until then, enjoy your music, and peace.